Hi, I'm Scott Houston. Do you like the way those chords sounded? Those were called slash chords, and I get a lot of questions from students about how to interpret a slash chord. That's what I'm going to teach you in this short video. Okay, let me tell you quickly about a special chord symbol called a slash chord. All right, it's a question that I get quite a lot from students. They come across this chord symbol that looks kind of odd, and they're not sure how to interpret it. But it's a pretty simple concept. There's just a few different ways you can kind of tackle it. So let's dig right in. Now, first of all, let's take a look at what slash chords look like. You'll see here that, they can, something like a G over A, or that I say G over A, it says G slash A, right? There's something to the left of the slash and something to the right of the slash. It'll say G slash A, or maybe, B flat major 7 slash C, something like that, or maybe even a C minor slash E flat. Now those might look kind of complicated, but it's really not that tough. But before I get into it, I need to really cover something called the root of a chord, and most of you probably know that, but if not, it's a super simple concept. So let me show you something. All right, when we're talking about chords and chord symbols, typically the root of the chord is just the lowest note of the chord. So if you're just playing a C chord, for example, right, something like that, well, it's a C chord, and that's a C major chord. Whatever the letter name of the chord is, in this case it's a C, that's the root. Well, it's not only the root, but it's kind of assumed that that's the bass note, if you will. So, the root of a C chord, C. What's the root of an F chord? F. What's the root of a D minor 7 chord? D, right? It's that lowest note. All right, now that's kind of critical because when you're looking at chord symbols, typically you come across a F7 and you'll play an F7 chord, but it's kind of expected that the F, which is the root of that chord, is going to be the lowest note that you hear. It's going to be the bass note, if you will. So however you're going to play the chord, you need to hear a F on the bottom. Well, here's the scoop. What a slash chord does is override that default root, and it will potentially give you a new root to play on a chord. Okay, so here's how you interpret it. Okay, whatever is to the left of the slash, okay, the left of the slash, that's the chord you're supposed to play. So if it says F, you play an F major chord. If it says, A flat minor 7, you play an A flat minor 7 chord. But whatever's to the right of the slash is the single note. That will never have anything but a single letter name there because that's the single note that needs to be the root of that chord now. It's going to be the note that you have to hear on the bottom, right? They're giving you a new bass note that is not the root, okay? So let me show you a couple. First, let's do, for example, here, a G slash A. So what that means is you're going to play a G chord, right? But the A, which is not part of that chord, an A note's not part of that chord, right? But because that A is to the right of the slash, that's a note that you have to hear in the bass. So it's going to sound like that, all right? So typically, if you just had a G or a G major chord, you would just play that chord, or you'd play, right, with a G in the bass. But since it says G slash A, you play an A in the bass instead. Now let's do another one. Say you have, let's do one, a B flat major 7 slash C. Now I actually think when you read a slash chord, it's a little bit simpler to think of it, and that's, I caught myself saying it at the very beginning of this video. I think of it like a fraction almost. If you tilt it a little, instead of saying B flat slash C, I think of it a B flat over C. And that mentally helps me because that means it's the chord over a different bass note, right? So back to this, we're going to try to do a B flat major 7 slash C, or over C. So you'd play a B flat major 7 chord. That's that chord, right? And instead of normally the B flat being the root, you have to play a C. So there you have it. There's a B flat major 7 over C. Okay, now, right now, I'm sure a lot of you are saying, a lot of my students in particular are saying, well, Scott, what if you're having to play the whole chord with your left hand? Well, this is just one of those situations where it gets a little bit tougher, and you need to, in some way, get that new bass note, the new root, played. So I would probably, in this case, reach down, play a C, and I'm maybe an octave of a C down here. You're going to reach down, and then maybe hold it with your pedal. I've got my pedal held down, right? And then come back up and play it. Just somehow, or maybe you could play an inversion somehow. I don't want to get too lost doing that, but somehow you've got to get whatever's to the right of the slash played as the lowest note you hear, okay? So I don't want to get too tied up in that. Now let's do another one. Maybe you could even do a, how about a F/A? Well, an F/A means play an F chord, right? But the A has to be the lowest note you hear. Well, this is one where the actual, the note they're giving you as the new bass note, it's actually a note that's in the chord, right? So that would be an F/A. And if that's the case, it's really just an inversion if you want to think of it that way. You could feasibly play that by just putting the F on top. That could be an F/A too. But again, typically you think of it as a bass note that you're wanting to hear. All right, so why do they even do slash chords, right? Now there's some theory reasons behind it. I mean, some kind of chord theory stuff, but in real practical terms, it's the way a composer can tell you in chord symbology, right, as opposed to literally writing everything out like traditional classical notation. When you're reading chord changes, it's the way that you are told to play a particular bass line. Like sometimes in a tune, a bass line is just so critical. A particular bass line is really part of the song as opposed to just following along all the roots. The bass line really does something different. So say if you're, say I'm going to play, say the chord changes are F and then F/E, right? And then F/D, F/C, right? Something like that, where you just have to hear this. That's just such a big part of the tune. The tune wouldn't be the tune without it. Well, that's how they'll tell you that. They'll write it as an F, then an F/E, F/D, F/C, something like that. So that's where that usually comes in, all right? So that's really the summary. I gave you a few kind of oddball, details on it, but the big picture to not get lost, to summarize, is whenever you come across a slash chord symbol, whatever's to the left of the slash is the chord that you play, and whatever's to the right of the slash is the single note you need to hear in the bass. If you remember nothing else, that'll help you out and get you through that anytime in the future. So I hope that helps, and as always, have fun playing piano.